Hi all, good morning. Hope you're doing well. We'll wait for 2 more minutes and we'll start the class. I'll just share my screen. So yesterday we had discussed about what is kernel, what are the major distributions we have in the Linux, and the key components of the Linux, and we have types of kernel and what does kernel do, the responsibilities of the kernel, what does it do, and how when you enter a command, what will happen in the backend, right? So, and the environment variables, we had discussed a bit on the environment variables, but so this is what we had discussed, right? So I just want to give you one small quiz so that, uh, and I have a, with that quiz, you will be getting a points. For example, you say 5 points or 10 points based on the question. And with that points, who accumulates more than 1,000, you say, it's just a fun game. Okay, so who accumulates more than thousands at the end of the class, complete class, and they're going to, it's a kind of surprise what they're going to get. And I'm going to share the first question. I think let's wait for few more minutes. We'll wait for a few more minutes to pass on to the quiz. And yeah, I hope, so hope you're able to see my screen. And yeah, we'll wait for a few more minutes and we'll start, we'll kick off the session. So regarding the yesterday's session, hope everyone was clear. Any doubts on the yesterday's session, guys? Vema or the guys who joined the class yesterday's session, do you have any doubts? Is it, if no, let me ask you a simple question. So if the Linux is free, how do companies like Red Hat or you take Ubuntu, they are making money? Anyone? Vema? If Unix is free, I mean Linux is free, how are they making money? How are they running their company? Any answers on that? So it pushes understanding of I mean, so I'll tell you the answer. So it's a kind of like they get the enterprise support. They pushes for enterprise support for all the companies, and the certification. You know, Red Hat 6, Red Hat 7, they will ask for certification. You know how much money they are going to charge. That's how the Kubernetes as well. So they're going to get a huge money from the certifications, from education time, and also from the ecosystem value, and they're going to get from the enterprise support, and there will be a lot of sponsors to develop the Linux or to develop uh, kind of Kubernetes open source systems. So that's how they are going to earn the money, right? Yeah. And can anyone answer, Vema, can you answer why does Linux is preferred for containers and Kubernetes? Why not Windows? Any idea on that? Yeah, Vijay had joined. Hi, Vijay. So we are discussing on why is Linux preferred for containers and Kubernetes nodes? Why not Windows? Any answer on that, Vijay? You want to answer that? Okay, no worries. So, because Linux contains already the concepts of Kubernetes, so Linux Kubernetes has built on based on the Linux. So there is a thing called lightweight, and the namespaces. Namespaces are nothing but isolations, and there are control groups, which are C groups. We call it as a. So based on those concepts, the Kubernetes has been built. So that is the reason Linux has been used because of the lightweight namespaces and control groups, right? So yeah, and now and yesterday we had discussed about these topics, and obviously we had discussed about the Linux architecture. So Linux architecture, as we know, it's nothing but it consists of a three layers, and physical layer, kernel layer, and the user space, and the top layer is the application. Creamy layer is the application layer, and obviously kernel is the heart of the OS, and it's used for handling process control hardwares and system libraries. And shell is a kind of common interpreter between the user and the kernel. And yeah, kernel is responsible for process management and memory allocation and device drivers and file system handling. And the core part of the OS is to handle these responsibilities. And now coming to our second class, that is Linux booting process. And with this, we are going to complete the module one. And tomorrow we are going to discuss about module two. That is into the Linux. We are going to go, I mean, we are going to install the Linux onto the one of the EC2 instance. Hope you have, hope everyone has this, yeah, hope everyone has AWS account. If not, I recommend you to install the AWS account so that it will be easier for you to, I mean, do the practice by installing the EC2 instance. Yeah. So get ready with the AWS account. You create the AWS account and we'll do practice on the AWS account. We'll create the EC2 instance and we'll start working on it, and we'll do some, we'll execute some commands on that, right? So let me share you the two questions I can say. Let me share you the two questions, and just answer them. You'll get the points. And as I told, by the end of the complete end of the course, how many points, like if you cross, who crosses more than 1,000 points. So for them, there is an surprise for them. And also those, whatever they want, if they are looking for a job or if they want a reference, or we can, I can help them out to get that, to achieve that. All right. Let me give you the questions. Yeah. Let me share it with you. Yeah. Okay. So before discussing that one, so can someone tell me in a simple form what we had discussed yesterday? Like I have iterated now. So can you people can you people also tell me what we had discussed yesterday in the short form? In a 2 to 3 sentences, can you tell me? Can you answer what we had discussed yesterday? Anyone? No? Okay, fine. So I'll share you the quiz at the end of this class, or after end of this module, I'll share you the quiz, so that we'll wait for some more people and then I'll share the quiz, as I can see very limited people here. And today we'll discuss about the yesterday's module, the continuation of the yesterday's module, that is Linux booting process, and we have the file system hierarchy. So which is, these are most important and crucial, we can say. And coming to Linux booting process. So for example, you can feel like when you switch on the system, what happens in the backend, right? For example, in the Windows, you cannot see anything what happens in the backend. So you will get the Windows, and you will get the login prompt and you will log in, right? In the same way, in the Linux also, every operating system when they start, the processes are going to, there are multiple things in the backend it's going to happen. The first thing is BIOS, basic input output system, we call it as. And what BIOS does, when you first turn on your computer, so this BIOS performs some integrity checks. Integrity checks in the sense it checks all, it does the, it's a kind of inspector. It checks all the hard disk, everything is, motherboard is correct or not, hard disk is correct, hard disk is in right form or not, network cards are there. So everything, this BIOS is going to check the connections between the hardware, everything is going to check when you first turn on the computer, right? So that's what the BIOS is, the first step. Then if after the, after it performs the complete checks, like after it come inspects all the hardware, all the components, then it loads and executes the bootloader program. Bootloader program is nothing but it's a kind of master boot master boot record program, we call it as, right? So sometimes we so how do you install an OS, you tell me first? Either by inserting the disk, or by doing the pen drive, or by network. There is a thing called through network you can install the OS. So these are some of the components how you can install the operating system, right? So after the BIOS, after the BIOS, in the BIOS, what will happen? The MBR sometimes on the US, as I told, it's on the USB stick or CD. So with a live installation, right, the files and all. So after the BIOS step, it loads the MBR from the USB or CD-ROM, right? And then it gives the controls to that boot record program. It gives the control to that, and then it exits. It gets exited. Once the bootloader program is detected, once the, okay, the bootloader program is there, it's then it loaded into the memory, and then BIOS gives controls to system, and it will leave. Now coming to MBR. So when an interviewer asks you, the basic question it was is, explain the booting process. So booting process is something, most of the interviews, like when you are attending for the Linux interviews, they will ask you the this Linux booting process. So that's the reason I'm explaining you this. How does it work, right? And once the MBR, once it gets the control to the MBR, so you so master boot record, what we call it as a master boot record. So MBR, this MBR is, once it's loaded, what happens is located on the first sector of the bootable disk. So there are uh, so in the disk there are multiple sectors, right? So in that sector, the first sector, it's going to hit that first sector, and it's a kind of bootable. So what do you mean by bootable? Bootable in the sense, like when you want to run, when you want to start the system, the configuration files which are required for the starting, that is called bootable disk. So which is typically we have on the first sector slash dow HTA or the hard disks. So I'll tell you this one. So slash dow is something, is a kind of hard disk. Okay, it's a devices, we call it as. So it's a kind of hard disk, right? On slash dow HTA or SDA. SDA is a kind of like SSD, we call it as, right? So those are called HTA, SDA, depending on your hardware, right? So the MBR, once the MBR loads and it gets onto the first sector to the bootable disk, and what happens with that? It The MBR contains the information about the grub. So it contains the information about the grub, or we call it as a grub. So it contains the information about the grub, and it just loads the grub and it gets execute. I mean, it gets exited. Hope you got it, right? See, first is BIOS, and the next one is MBR, master boot record, and the next one is grub. So grub is kind of kernel, we can say. It's a kind of heart again. So grub is very important, and basically when you, I mean, it splashes the screen. Like in the grub stage, what happens? You will get the screen splashed up, and the first thing when you see, I mean, you see when you boot your computer, for example, it has simple menu like where you select some options. Like if you have uh, in here, we can select the kernel. So again, I'm telling you why I'm stressing on this MBR. I mean, why booting process is, it is something important. Boot process is something important when you attend the interviews for where there are where they more focus on the Linux rather than DevOps. So there they will ask you, first thing is booting process. On the booting process, there are multiple interview questions which are uh, attached or which are linked to this. For example, I'll tell you simple question, that is your system went into hung state, right? Or else you forgot the root password. What do you do? Or else the system went into maintenance mode, or your kernel, you applied a kernel, and that went into after you applied a patching is nothing but you applied a security fix to your kernel, and what happened after you applied security fix to kernel, and the system went into hang state? What do you do? So these all interview questions will be depending on this booting process, because it, as I told, the first thing is the, I mean, BIOS, after that MBR, and then grub. Grub is something where you can select the kernel and you can go into the kernel, you can select the maintenance mode, single user mode. So I'll tell you all those modes as well. So these all things can be done here, like grub, right? If you have multiple kernel images installed on your, obviously, like when we upgrade the server, when you upgrade the server, now what happened is, now we are getting the virtual machines, and we no need to upgrade. It's automatically getting upgraded from the Amazon EC2 instances or from the backend. But still you need to do this, like you need to run the commands like sudo apt-get upgrade or sudo yum upgrade. So these are the things you need to upgrade still. And also, for example, I'll tell you one thing. In every company, they will not apply the patches, they will not install without intimating you. You know, so for example, there is a kernel, I mean, there is an you are using a system for long back. For example, you're using a Red Hat server, Red Hat 7, from 3 years. You took the commitment for 3 years and you are using it, the dedicated hardware, and there is an upgrade, there is a patch for the Red Hat 7. So they will intimate you, they will tell you that, so though we are Red Hat 7 is getting extended. For example, some application you take, in that Red Hat 7, there is an kernel upgrade is there, or there is a kernel, there is a vulnerability. Vulnerability is nothing but you need to install the, I mean, you will get it a fix for every application. There is a fix in the sense the stable versions will be there, and there is an bug fixes will be there. There is a security fixes. These are all called as patching. I mean, they call it as an patches. Patches is nothing but installing a small software, small bug we can say, small software we can say on top of the application. If there are any fixes, we call it as a patches on the infra, right? And now coming to one another one more thing. So in the DevSecOps, arena. So in the DevSecOps area, so there is a thing called vulnerability management. So you have to do that vulnerability management also, which is a crucial important, I mean, which is a crucial one in the industry. So vulnerability management is nothing but this is where you need to do the patching, you need to do, you need to install some applications, or you need to do a top up on installed applications, or you need to do the impact analysis before installing it, before doing the patching. So these all activities you need to perform when it comes to either DevOps, either even the MLOps, even in the Linux. These are something very common kind of vulnerability management and the DevSecOps. DevSecOps in the sense, as I told, like now it came right, DevSecOps concepts. I mean, now in they were calling it as DevSecOps, Development Security Operations. And yeah, so now coming to the point, so this is grub, right? Grub is nothing but we can select the kernel. For example, you installed an, for example, you had done the patching, and you had done the patching in the sense you had installed a kernel. So installed in the kernel in the sense already there is a kernel, okay, and you want to, there is a new kernel which came. I mean, the I mean, you say Red Hat, from the Red Hat they told this kernel has a bug, or you want to, you need to upgrade the kernel version to another version. So once they intimate to you, what do? You tell me, you will install on top of the existing kernel or you upgrade the kernel. What do you do? Any of anyone from anyone can answer that. You will install the kernel from the, I mean, you will override the existing kernel or you will upgrade the kernel. You will keep the existing kernel and you will upgrade the kernel. What do you do? Hope you understand the question. Anyone from the audience?
Maybe we will upgrade the kernel only.
Yeah. Why?
Because we are already using the new, like a lot old versions. The same version, whatever the new version will come, will go to the upgrade only.
Okay. So you mean to say the override
Yeah.
will do will do the override,
Yes.
is it?
Yeah.
Okay. So any still any questions? Anyone? Any answers? Still any answers? Okay. So the one who answered, what is your name? So I can see your name is iPhone or something. What is your name? Sorry.
Rupa.
Okay, Rupa. So yeah, thanks, Rupa. Uh, so as you told, one we have to will upgrade the kernel, right? So this is something logical question they will ask you into the interviews, and what uh, so if you upgrade the kernel, if you override the kernel, if in case that kernel is not working and it went into hung state, what do you do at that time? You cannot do anything, right? So the complete system will crash, right? So usually what people will do is they will keep the existing kernel and they will install the new kernel, right? And when they do the grub in this stage, they will boot the system with the new kernel, new one. Got it? they will install the system with its kernel. So for example, if the system is not working as expected, what they will do, they will go back, they will reboot the system, and again they will select the old kernel. It's a kind of rollback what they do. Hope it makes sense, Rupa.
Yeah, got it, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So that's what will happen in the real industry. So they will just install the kernel, new kernel, and they are going to select the kernel here, and they are going to boot with the new kernel. Once everything is working fine, they will monitor for 1 month or 2 months or a couple of months, and they will remove the old kernels by, I mean, in the GUI itself, they will remove, I mean, in the CLI itself, they can remove the old kernels, right? Like mremove, or there are some commands, or we can remove the packages, the old kernel packages, and then that's how the kernel patching will be done. So they, I mean, in the interviews, they might ask you the kernel patching. So how do you do the kernel patching, and how do you do the patchings of your application? I mean, operating system. So it's a something I mean, it's a something regular questions, or we can say something. Uh, yeah, we can say something regular questions. What interview questions? What we can say they will ask, right? So still now it's clear, right? So grub is nothing but it's a kind of, we are going to get the screen, flash screen, and we are going to select the kernel, right? And by default, what will happen? The latest kernel image will be selected. You need to make it as, you need to select, or else it will, by default, it will select the kernel, right? And if you don't load, it will wait for a few seconds, and it will select. In many systems, for example, you can, the main configuration, see, as I told, the Linux is completely a file system. So everything was, for example, you are executing a command ls, or for example, you are executing some commands. So every command is a file, is a script, I can say. Everything is a script. And for example, like the this is the main, we can say, the grub, grand unified bootloader. And so in this grub stage, what will happen, there is a configuration file for everything. There is a configuration files will be there, those are stored in etc. And for this grub configuration file, it will be the grub configuration file is slash boot slash grub slash grub dot conf. Got it. So this is the main configuration file for grub. Or we can have, as I told, every configuration file will be there under etc slash grub.conf. So these are hard coded in the sense these are static. These will not change, right? So these are the configuration files for grub. And yeah. And now coming to the kernel. So kernel, as I told, it's a heart of the operating system. Once you select the kernel here in the grub stage, once you select the kernel, so in the kernel of what happens, it mounting is nothing but making the file system into active. That is what mounting is. Yesterday, as I told, for example, you install a hard disk. Once you install hard disk, immediately it will not work. Even in your operating system, even in your desktop, in the I mean, even in your Windows, one, if you keep the new pen drive, immediately it will not work. You need to format into NTFS, I think so. You need to format into NTFS, right? Uh, so you need to make the file system into an active. So that's what we call it as an, in the Linux, we call it as a mounting. Mounting in the sense, for example, you uh, you created a file system, you want to use that file system. Okay, how do you use the file system? So you need to install that file system on a directory. Directory, as you know, for example, directory is nothing but I'll tell you, there are files or files and directories. Files is nothing but it's a kind of file, you know, right? So it's a simple, you where you store the content, where you store the each, this is, for example, this is a file, right? So the number of files consists of a directory. Simple. So directory is something where you need to install on that, the file system you need to install on that directory, that is called mounting, right? So after installing on that directory, you can go to the directory and you can do the read and write operations on that directory. Hope everyone is clear. That is what mounting is. So what happens here is kernel, in the kernel, so it mounts the root file system. So the first file system is root slash. We call it as a slash or root. So these are kind of, slash or root is a kind of I mean, we can say that is the first thing what will execute in the Linux booting process coming to file system. Okay. So it mounts the root file system as specified in the grep.conf. And once it mounts the root file system, it executes slash has been slash init program. Sorry, program. So what is this slash init, slash has been slash init program? So slash has been everything, as I told, it's a file. So file can be scripts. So file is nothing but what? If you want to make it a static file, you can make it a static file. If you want to modify into script, you can modify into script, right? So what happens is it executes this slash has been slash init script. It's nothing but program, they will call it as. So once it gets executed, and once it gets executed, the, I mean, all the file systems, everything, the slash will be activated, slash root will be activated, and the process ID will be created. So you know kernel what it does, what it kernel does, it creates the process, it creates the memory, it creates all file systems, it creates, it handles memory allocation, device drivers, all these things, it will process management, everything it takes care, right? So once the kernel gets executed, the s slash has been, this program gets executed, then what happens, it gets the process ID. The process ID, the first one is one, it starts with the one, right? Because it's getting executed, the first one is getting executed, the program ID will be one. And what will happen, the kernel creates a temporary root file system. Temporary in the sense, the root file system, it's a kind of initial RAM until the real file system gets mounted. Okay, so that is what the kernel does. You can simply, you can tell them that kernel mounts the file system and creates the process ID, it's a kind of one, and it execute, after executing slash has been slash init program, it create the process ID will be one. That's it, enough. So that is what the kernel does. And then after the kernel, the real thing will start. After this slash has been slash in it, after executing this, there are run levels. You know, there are run level one, run level zero, run level one. I'll tell you this. Run level zero, run level one, RL2, RL3, RL4, sorry, RL3, RL4, or we can say RL5, RL6. Okay. So these are some of the run levels. What will get executed after this? Okay. after the kernel, run, run levels will get executed. What are these run levels? So run level is the first one is power off. Okay. And after the run level one is something kind of rescue mode. So these are the modes we can say. These are kind of rescue mode. And run level three is something kind of multi-user. So in run level three, you can multiple users can use. And run level five is something graphical. You can see the graphical users. And run level six is something, it's a kind of reboot. Reboot is something, but so what you can do is the commands are init 0, init 1, init 6, init 3, init 1. So run level programs are something, but the configuration files are etc as I told rc0.d, rc0.d. Okay, this is the configuration file. Everything it will execute after. So in a high level, this is what after the slash has been slash init program. So this is these are what it's going to execute run level programs. For example, rc.0.d, rc.1.d, rc.2.d. So these are the things are going to execute. And the multi-user. Multi-user is something but without NFS and with NFS. This is multi-user without NFS. And if you want NFS, you can use with NFS. NFS is nothing but network file system or networking. Without networking, you can say, yeah, without networking or NFS. Or with networking, we can use the most of the people. For example, most of the in the industry, they will use run level 5. So you can see the default run level and with a command, right? And so hope everyone is clear. So once after the kernel is executed, it will start the run levels. After the run levels, you need to select which run level you want. Either you want with run level 1 or run level 3 or run level 5. Once you select the run level 5, that's it. It will start the programs based on the uh, so I'll tell you one thing. So there is a thing called the, you will find the programs that start with S is starting. And while you shut down the server, for example, you give the command call init 0. So it's a kind of power off. So you're powering off the system. And when you execute the power of the system, so it will end with K. K is nothing but killing the process. Killing in the process means what? So you're just killing all the process. And once you kill the one, it's gone. Everything is down. So this is something like you start with S and you end with kill. You end with K. So this is what the high level is. I mean, yeah. So this is what the booting process is, right? So so coming to this, at this point, you execute the run level programs. At one point, it would like for an init file, usually found at init tab to decide the run level. And depending on the which Linux distribution we have installed, we will see different services getting started. For example, you might start SendMail, and as I told, it starts with S. So it will start with all the S programs like starting. And so that is how it's a simple, that is how we are going to do it. And any doubts on this? Anyone? Any doubts on this? On the booting process? Anyone? Okay. If not, we will go to the next step, that is file system hierarchy, right? So file system hierarchy is something, as I told, file system hierarchy, everything starts with slash. So I just want you people to respond, like anyone has any doubts, or hope you're understand what it makes sense, or you want me to go a bit faster, or you want me to go a bit slow. Anyone? Any? Okay. Okay. So if no questions, or if no questions, so yeah, we'll go. So everything in the Linux, as I told, everything in the Linux starts with the single root directory, that is this. As I told, it's going to mount in the from the booting process, it's going to mount from the kernel, and it's going to start this slash. So even if you see in the Windows, it it is something C drive, right? The C drive, what C drive consists of? It consists of all the programs, direct, system related stuff, right? So this is what the slash is. Slash consists of all the system related stuff, right? And so it's a kind of it is a top of the hierarchy, I can say, the slash everything. So if you see this one, you need to start with the slash. Everything you need to start with the slash, right? And only the root. There are users, kind of users. For example, root and sudo and normal user. So these are some of the important users in the Unix, on the Unix server. Root is something kind of admin, and sudo is something, is a kind of which has the permission to execute the root, uh, which has the permission to execute the root commands, but not completely, but not full-fledged, right? So it's a kind of uh, we can say root per admin, I mean we can say admin, but not full admin, full admin rights, right? So normal user is something, but is something like you can access the server, but you cannot execute any commands other which are system related, or which are root level, admin level permissions, right? So how can you decide these things? I mean, root commands, sudo commands, or normal commands. So how can you decide those things? So those things I will tell you, like when it comes to the file system hierarchy, like now. So for example, you want to mount an EBS volume, or you want to create you want to switch off the server, right? So what you can execute only the you can execute only when you are root, or if you have sudo permissions, then only you can execute. The normal user cannot execute those things, right? I'll give you one of the another example as well. If you want to mount an volume, if you want to mount an kind of you created a new hard disk and you want to mount that, okay, and like an EBS volume in the AWS. Okay, you can mount under slash mnt slash data or slash op or slash apps or anything. All these are under slash. Anything you take, it comes under slash in the Linux, right? So there is a concept called absolute path and relative path. Anyone aware of this absolute and relative path? Anyone in the Linux? Anyone is aware of this absolute or absolute and relative path? So absolute path is something, I'll tell you this. This is bit important in order to you work on that. So absolute path is something. So first of all, what is a path? I'll tell you this. What is a path? Anyone in the audience? Anyone from the class? Anyone? What is a path? What do you mean by path?
Path means it is a URL which redirect to a particular position or particular place or particular directory. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's a kind of location. So for example, if you are staying in somewhere in Bangalore or Hyderabad, so in a particular place, so that's what the system that I mean, kind of location, exact location where a file or directory is located in the file system. So that's what the location was. So in the path, so there are consists of absolute path and relative path. For example, if you want to go to your home, so if you want to go to your location, right? So there is a complete address or where, for example, we are standing in a particular point, right? And you want to go to your home. There is a complete address you can give, or you can give the relative address relative to your working directory. Like for example, uh, how can I tell you that complete address in the sense when you speak with the people. For example, if you are filling a document, if you are filling a document, or if you are applying for anything, if you need to give your complete address. So that is what the absolute path, complete address, absolute path, right? And relative path is something that where you are standing. For example, you are standing in a particular place near to your home. For example, you're adjacent to your home, and you need to go to your home, and you will say the address from where you are standing. So that is what the relative path is. You're understanding my. So absolute is something holistic view, and relative is something from where you are, current working directory, right? So that is what the absolute or relative paths are. That's what we call it as an absolute path or relative path. I'll give you now the example of what is absolute path and relative path. So absolute path starts from the slash directory. It's a complete address. We call it as an. It starts with the root directory and shows the full location. It's a kind of full location, we can say. Full location of a file or directory of a directory, right? And as I told, it begins with the slash, right? And for example, there is a your once you log into the server, any of this, once you log into the server, every home there is a server. For every server, there is a home directory slash home. We'll discuss about that one. Slash home is something where your particular contents will be there. For example, I have multiple users. For example, I have, you say, 100 users I have. For example, you say Narayana, you're there, right? So you will be having separate directory called, once we create a user, you will be having a directory called /home/Narayana. In this Narayana, it's automatically gets with the user /home. Once we create a user with the Narayana and your contents, for example, whatever you create a file, you create a directory, all these contents will be there inside your folder, your home directory. For example, you take off gated society or gated community, right? For every flat, there is a name. For example, for every flat, there is a number. It associates with the number, flat number, right? So when you want to address it, when you want to go to your home, what do you say? So I have to go to the kind of brigade or kind of PLH or something like kind of flat, and then you will tell the flat number, right? So that is how in the real time scenario also. So first is home, then your home name, kind of your home directory name, and inside the home directory name, you include all your personal stuff, like you include your all your files, directories, right? So that is how it starts with. For example, /home/Narayana slash uh, uh, you take the projects directory, and you get code and file called script.sh. So this is something called the absolute path, right? No matter where you are in the system, that this path always points to the same file. Okay, you got it. For example, you want to go to an log file. You want to go to a particular log file. How do you go that? So you have to type the complete path. For example, cd/home. So you want to go here, and if you type this, so irrespective of where you are in the server, you will be redirected to this, right? So this is how. And with this, it's very important because uh, if you understand this absolute path and relative path, it will be very easier for you to accustom the Linux, and you can do multiple operations. For example, you want to copy, you have to do, I mean, if you can move. So it is something basics, I can say, the absolute path and the relative path, right? And now coming to the relative path. So relative path is something, for example, you are working in a, you are in this space. For example, you are in, uh, you are working here in this path. Okay. And from here, if you want to go to Narayana, or if you want to go to /var/log some file name, there is a thing called sample.txt. So how do you go here? From here, you are in this position, you are here, and from here to, you need to go here. How do you go there? How do you cat this, or how do you use this file? Any questions? Sorry, any answers? So anyone?
Yeah, so we can go back to the root directory and we can give this relative path.
Yeah. Or you can directly execute cd I. So what you can do here is you can give cd the complete path. This is absolute path. Or what you can do is, as you told, you can go back to the root directory one step one step backward, and from there onwards you can go here. For example, you are here, okay, in the code. And so tomorrow we'll discuss more about this, because tomorrow we'll install the server and you will be much acquainted, or I can show you all these things, right? So so I'll tell you tomorrow, like in brief, I can tell you with the real time how we can do, right? So you can understand a bit more. So relative path, as of now, you just understand it. What is relative path? Relative path is something you are working in a current directory. From the current working directory, where you want to go. For example, one step backward, one step forward, one step, I mean, two steps backward, or relative to your current working directory, right? Working directory. So it does not starts with, you no need to start with slash here. Relative path, you no need to start with you need to start with slash. That is one. For absolute path, every time you need to, it's compulsory, you need to start with slash, right? And that is the thing. And there are some more concepts called dot. What do you mean by dot? Dot is nothing but current working directory. Current working directory. And dot dot is something called, we call it as a parent directory. So parent directory is nothing but you want to go bit back. I mean, uh, backward. You can use this dot dot, and this symbol is nothing but is used for home directory. So home directory is nothing but if you do this one, if you give this symbol, it will directly go to slash home slash whatever you call Venkat or Narayana or Ruchitra, or you can go to directly this slash home slash if you execute this, where irrespective of your paths, right? So this is something pseudo permissions, I mean absolute path and relative path. And now coming to our main the concepts, like what are the file systems, right? So I'll tell you today the file systems, what and all we use it for and why it is used for. And from the tomorrow we can work on we can see what are those, and in the by installing an application in the EC2 we can see that, right? And coming to, as I told, coming to slash, it's a kind of root. It's a top of the hierarchy, and it's a kind of slash root user, we can say, right? And slash bin is something where basic commands. What do you mean by command? Command is nothing but a script. As I told, everything is a file, and files are executable. And so command in the sense, for example, we have so many commands. Command is something. So for example, we have ls. I'll tell you all the commands, right? ls, cat, or cp. So see, these are all the commands, and these are all the scripts in the backend. Okay. So these commands are saved under slash bin. So now you understood, right? So for example, the normal user will be able to access these commands, basic commands, slash bin commands. Okay. So for example, uh, when your CI/CD pipeline script runs CP or RM, those executables live in slash bin, right? If they if uh, if they want to execute RM command, it will come. They cannot execute the RM command even in the CI/CD pipelines or anywhere. If they want to execute RM command, they cannot execute. Okay, so those are executables in the slash bin. So RM command, I think it is there in the slash bin. And what you cannot do is in this, there are commands which are administrative commands, admin commands. We can call it as an admin commands. So admin commands are something kind of reboot or init6, which interact and which which will affect the system. So those are called administrative commands, right? For example, systemctl, we can take. So we can call it as in some of it. I mean, some of advanced commands we can call it as. So these are sbin. These commands will be saved under sbin. So for the normal user, he will not be having access to execute this sbin commands. Okay. So for example, uh, if you want to restart an nginx server or nginx application, so you will not only the root or admin will have an access to this. Okay. So next is etc. So etc is something configuration files, all the configuration files. It's a kind of C drive. Configuration files will be stored under etc. So for example, whatever you take, even SSH configuration, password configurations, and for example, the system related, all the configuration files will be stored under /etc. /home is something, as I told, home directories will be there. All the home directories will be residing in /home. And for example, your files, your scripts, or your downloads, whatever you can store it in /home. And coming to /root, /root is something kind of super user, not the slash. It's a kind of home directory for, even for user /root user should have one home directory, right? So that is what this home directory is, right? And next one is, yeah, /root is root's user home directory. Root user's home directory, I can call it as home directory. So next is /var. We have /var is something where we can store all the logs, or which we can simply say the changing data, which changes the data frequently, or the variables, or we can say simple logs or mails, or uh, cron tab related, or cache. So these all things mainly we use for logs, /var/logs. So these all things will be stored under /var. Okay. For example, if you want to see the nginx logs, or if you want to troubleshoot something, some logs by using some logs. So these all will be stored under /logs. Okay. And /op is something kind of what we call operation. I mean, it's a kind of third party software. For example, you install Jenkins on top of the OS, or if you installed Grafana or Prometheus. So these all will be stored under /op. Okay, third party or custom applications. We can call it as /op. So /user is something. So you can ask me what is the difference between /user and /op, right? So /user is /user is something kind of user executables. I mean, for example, we can say it is a second top directory after /. So it stores user applications, libraries, and documentation. So for example, what you'll get is /user /bin or /user or /sbin. Okay, kind of it stores all the users applications, universal applications, like universal, you can say universal user. For example, you have Jenkins users, right? So Jenkins users, where they will stay, like a common users, applications, libraries. So those all will be stored under so like libraries and documentation, like documentation. So these all will be stored under slash user. And slash temp is something uh, is a call where the temporary files will be stored under here. Temporary files will be stored under here, and these will be cleared or rebooted based on the reboot. So for example, if you reboot the server, these files will be cleared, right? And so the last two are slash proc. Proc is something kind of so it contains the process informations. All the process informations will consist of this proc. So for example, if you want slash proc CPU info, or slash proc memory info, mem info. So these all things, process informations related things, you can uh, do this. So it is used heavily by Prometheus. You got it? So used heavily by Prometheus. So you can correlate these things, okay? By Prometheus, like node exporter. I'll tell you what are those things when we get into that. But why do we why do they use these slash proc is something to get the information. For example, how many CPUs are there, how many processors are there, what memory is consuming, what memory is there. So these all things will be, for example, if you want to monitor anything, so these are must, right? So these are the must informations what you need in the system. So that is where you use this for monitoring, for logging, all these things you will be using slash proc. And the final one is slash sys. Sys is something, it consists of all kernel or hardware information. It consists of all the kernel or hardware information. For example, you want to check the kernel parameters, or you want to check the device attributes or anything. So you are going to get by slash sys, right? And the last one is slash dev. And slash dev is something where you will have all the devices, we can say. And yeah, so all the devices, no, for example, hard disks, as I told. For example, device nodes, we can say, or devices. For example, slash dev slash uh, HDA or SDA, SDA, or slash dev slash null. You people might know what is slash dev slash null. It's something, if you want to, sorry, if you want to nullify any file, you use this. And if you want to reroute the error logs in, you can reroute to this so that the logs will be nullified. So in the scripts and all, they will shell scripting, they will use this slash dev slash null recursively. I mean, rigorously they will use this. And we have another one slash dev slash TTY, which is a kind of terminal. And yeah, that's it. We have, these are the file systems. And so tomorrow we will discuss, we'll create a server and we will discuss all these things. We will just uh, see how we can, will install the I mean, in server EC2 instance. And after that, we'll go to the next module. That is, we will do that user, I mean, user creations, user modules, and we'll practice the basic commands. So in the next module, we are going to discuss that, right? And yep, any questions till now? Anyone?
I'm good.
Thanks, Narayana. Anyone? Still? So, so tomorrow we'll discuss, as I told, we'll discuss about installing an EC2 instance. And also we'll discuss the command line, what like PWD commands, basic commands we'll discuss. And if the permission, if we time gets permitted, we'll discuss about uh, we'll discuss the Linux permissions and user management as well. And yeah, so those are the things. Hope everyone is clear. Yeah. So any doubts, you can reach out to me, right? So if you have any of the doubts, you can reach out to me and you can post your queries in the WhatsApp group. And whatever you feel, you can post your queries. Yeah. Any if you have any doubts, you can. I'm giving you 5 minutes. You can. And tomorrow I'll try to prepare the quiz as well. Like I mean, today we do not have much time. So tomorrow I'll give you the quiz as well. Based on that, we'll have the points. Like as I told, you'll be getting 1,000 points at the end of the course. Who will be getting 1,000 points? So they'll have the surprises, and they will have the kind of. I'll help you in the reference. I mean, I'll help you in the referral for each of you people who performs well or who responds proactively, right? So yeah, any I hope no doubts much. So if you have any doubts, you can reach out to us. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Narayana. And why I'm stressing on Linux much is, see, I'm not stressing it. So we will continue this for like couple of, 2 more weeks, I can say. 2 more weeks, we'll continue this. One maximum 2 weeks, we'll continue the Linux and we'll finish it off. And once we finished off with the Linux, we'll go to the next step, that is DevOps, that is kind of CI/CD pipelines. And I mean, sorry, AWS will go cloud. And once we're done with the cloud, and we'll go to the DevOps and CI/CD pipelines and all stuff. And once we are done with, we'll go with the SRE and then MLOps. So you will be familiar with end to end, from the starting to ending, you will be familiar with. So what you need to do is you just go through. So for example, tomorrow we'll start the class with the basic commands. If you are familiar with the commands, you can just skip it. Okay. If not, you can, if you want to brush up the skills, or if you want to learn about bit of Linux, you can practice the commands, you can do that, right? So because Linux is bit important, I can say. So that's the reason it's a basics what we need, right? So that's the thing. Okay, guys, I hope no questions. No one have any questions, and yeah, that's it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.